That was in 2018. Then you come in which year? And decide that this is how we have to go. Why is this that important, that it doesn't leave any government?
Thank you very much. Let me first express my deepest appreciation to Madam Clara T. Keseti for what profound work that the committee has done in trying to align and synchronize the various reports that they work with. A huge load that they put into one basket and endeavor to sift, and they produce a very wonderful document for us. As we said, we've lived with this constitution for the past few years. I've gotten to know the various deficits in the application of the constitution. So to some of us, the practitioners, we came to a conclusion that we needed to offer some twists and turns at various provisions. So I remember early 2018, I raised this matter, and with Gloria, who was the Attorney General, and she indicated to me that she agrees and that something ought to be done. It was really ensuing from what we had started doing at the ministry with the expanded leadership at the time. And we had come to some conclusion that we needed, as a way forward, to revisit what had been done by the committee that was set up by Professor Mills. So that's how the whole endeavor got off the ground by the then Attorney General. But independent of her own effort, as I said, we had already begun our own at the Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs. Unfortunately, along the line, her endeavor fizzled out, and then ours then grew. And then together with my colleagues and compatriots, the Honorable Fuseni Inusa, the Honorable Ben Abdullah, who at the time, the two of them were with the Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee. And that's why I so much leaned on them to join me to get this onto the track.
Gloria Kufu's committee was looking to do, if you like, piecemeal implementation.
Absolutely.
So they took one by one and proposed how to go about them.
That was the difference between what we proposed to do and what they set out to do. And so the combination of events is what has been related to by Madam here. And I think she's not even related to all the aspects. For instance, dealing with the executive. I mean, we all acknowledge that the powers and responsibilities vested in the president, too huge, too many. How do you cure that? Is it to submit some of the appointments that the president makes to Parliament for approval so that it becomes a shared responsibility? It's one matter that is outstanding, and we need to make progress, which is already related to the appointment of cabinet ministers to come from outside, the number, the presidential travels, whether once the president travels outside Ghana, he ceases to be a president such that the vice president should take over. And in the absence of the vice president, the speaker also takes over. These are matters that we need to deal with.
She was on this same platform. She was on this same platform. Sorry about this brief interruption. With Anthony Forsing Jr., former president of the Ghana Bar Association, who was also the youngest in the Consultative Assembly that made the 1992 Constitution. And when they suggested a capping of the ministers to 25, there was such popular support for it. Then you go for the validation process, and I saw all the senior statesmen, Okujeto, I saw Setepe, the rest of them, Minister Fuseni himself were all there. And you agree now that it should come to 55 rather than 25.
The reason was that when they suggested 25, it didn't include the regional ministers.
Right.
It didn't include the regional ministers. At the time they had 10, now we had 16. So if you take 16 from the 25, I was suggesting that we can only have 9 ministers.
Okay.
So it didn't include the regional ministers. Now we have regional ministers. And we also recognize that, yes, there are certain ministries that one could do without having deputy ministers. There are some that necessarily require deputy ministers. For instance, a ministry like Finance and Economic Planning. If you have a minister for the ministry who is strong on finance, you require somebody to assist him whose strength will be on economic planning. We are now talking about realigning ministries. A ministry of transportation, for instance, would superintend over roads and highways, aviation, ports and harbors, railways, and such. You're not saying that one person can superintend over all these. So you need an engineer perhaps, who will be in charge of maybe roads and railways, and the other one for aviation and ports and harbors. So there, and then mines and energy, if the ministry should remain like that. The two are different, natural resources. So those configurations would have to be worked out.
Okay.
So I'm just saying that there are some that require deputy ministers.
So you proceed on your
yes.
substantive point, because their proposal was that you scrap deputy ministers and all of these things.
No. I think make a point. We have agreed. We
and
have
again,
come to some consensus.
You agree that eventually this will be for broader national consultation.
Absolutely.
So the people's views would
matter.
What will matter.
Would matter.
All right.
In fact, we were intending to do after this one, the next step for us was to have some cross-sectional representation to interrogate the issues contained in the report. After which, perhaps we will lead ourselves to maybe a consultative assembly or whatever. Because, as we said, this constitution was validated by the general populace.
That's right.
So ultimately, it will have to go back to them. And that is what maybe, sometimes we disagreed on the processes and procedures. Some of us do think that we can boss everything together at the consultative assembly level to have a new document, and then we shall have just one referendum on that. If the people approve of it, it then supplants what constitution, and it will cut down the cost.
Right.
But that's something left.
We're talking about the importance of this, yes, and why no government appears to leave the subject.
Yes.
Before I came in with my question. So proceed on your subject.
Yes, and I was talking about, for instance, the executive. Have you looked at the tenure of office of the president under Article 66? It does 4 years, and that's it. Whereas, and that is an entrenched provision. But under Article 113, where there is, the country is involved in war, for instance, Parliament can extend its life by 4 years. But the president, who is supposed to be the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, who is supposed to lead the effort in the war situation, will have to exit. And there will not be any president or vice president, but there will be a parliament. There's a clear vacuum. So how do you cure that mischief? So it was something that also engaged the attention of the NDPC. Madam spoke eloquently about that. The Constitution requires governments to continue with the programs and projects executed by exiting administrations. We're not doing that as much because a party comes with its own manifesto and they think that let's restrict ourselves to this manifesto. Meanwhile, a road is being constructed. Another government comes, he sees that, oh, this road is not my priority. He leaves it. The road construction has gotten to some level. It's abandoned. 2, 3 years, 4 years, we come back. And the nation loses so much.
Because you have to start all over again.
Because you have to start all over again. And it's all because the NDPC, which is so to define a long-term development plan for us, it's not accorded the pride of place that it should. It's not accorded the pride of place because of the composition of the NDPC itself. It comes out as a very politically tainted, body. Today, the NDPC is made up of 47 members. The 47 members, about 32 are ministers and deputy ministers of the NPP administration. They've come up with a brilliant document. Do you think the NDC will have a buy-in? They will come and they will throw it somewhere and constitute their own NDPC. So we keep moving forwards and backwards and not making any progress. You've spoken about what to do with the speakers, the parliament. Ghana's parliament is only 1 out of 9 parliaments in the world whose speakers are not members of parliament. Is it helping us? or perhaps it's retarding our progress. If the speakers are members of parliament, there is that kind of peer review system. And, you know, Madam was even alluding to the number of 276 as against 277. Now, if the speaker is not to be a member of parliament, then we require the 277. If the speaker is a member of parliament, which some of us believe he must be, because if you have a speaker who is a member of parliament, his attention is on parliament, how to develop parliament. We have had situations where speakers come, they are not looking to develop parliament, but they are self-seekers. Let's be blunt with ourselves. It cannot continue. If you have a member of parliament as a speaker who knows that his colleagues know him, he will submit himself to parliament. So that is how to grow parliament and having situations where resources that are for parliament will be utilized by parliament, the committees of parliament, which are the vehicles for advancing the cause of parliament. Parliament's committees need money to work, and they don't have them. I'm not talking about this parliament. It's been with us. They don't have money to do that because the speakers have a way of dealing with the clerks. Oh, let's sequester this amount for me. We want to do this, we want to do that, which may not be the priority of parliament. If the speaker is a member of parliament, we'll look at what is required to be done for parliament. The Council of State. Samson, if you look at the construct of the Constitution very well, with respect to, first of all, the number, it provides for, when we had 10 regions, the president was required to appoint from these 10 regions. Now it's 16. From the 10, the president appointed 11 members, additional. Now they represented all of them came from the regions, the 10 regions. Today we have 16 regions. Can we have 10? The Council of State, or 17. The Council of State, if you look at what they are required to do, you look at Article 90, they deal with bills. You look at Article 91, other matters. The Council of State, by the construct of the Constitution, really is supposed to be the second chamber. Have they been living up to that billing? They haven't. How do we make them proactive and focus on their prime responsibilities? It's something that we should be looking at. We've spoken about capping the number of seats in Parliament. The immunity of members of Parliament is something that we have been talking about. Article 117, that they are immune from service, from the processes from the courts. 117, 118. How do you cure that? So these are matters that, and then finally, you notice that whereas Parliament has the function to approve of supplementary budgets where maybe in a particular year funds appropriated for expenditure are proved to be insufficient, or perhaps maybe there's a windfall and we have additional resources we need to spend, where a supplementary budget is placed before Parliament, Parliament can and must approve of the supplementary budget. If you look at the present construct of this Constitution, the main budget, it comes to Parliament, and the Constitution says that it's only for the information of Parliament. It doesn't need the approval of Parliament. How do we address it?
Right.
So there are matters of substance. The judiciary, we need to, purge the Constitution of the position of public tribunals and so on. As for the capping of the number of Supreme Court justices, I know you quarrel with me. But the chairperson would also quarrel with me when I raise these matters. But there are matters that ultimately the general public...
we had 12 institutions, the University of Ghana School of Law.
Yes.
Clara was nominated from that university, and she became the chairperson by their own voting. You have the National Commission on Civic Education, the SHRAJ, you have the Africa Center for Economic Transformation, Professor John Asafoye. You had National Media Commission, NMC. You had the Judiciary, represented by Justice Yoni Kolendi. You had the Audit Service, Parliamentary Service, Nana Tewia Ochi, Ghana Bar Association, Anthony Forsing, the Ministry of Justice and Attorney General, Alfred Yeboah, the National Development Planning Commission, the Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs.
The current president and the former presidents as well.
Okay.
President Kufuor himself was with us.
Okay.
And from former President Mahama, now President-elect, his office also brought submissions to us. So the whole
I was only referring to the membership of the consultative committee.
Right.
So you submitted your report to the president on Monday.
Right.
And the president was very clear about it, that there were aspects that he too didn't seem to agree with you even before he reads it.
Yes.
But he will make his copious note.
Right.
He was very particular about that, and insisted that he will pass it on to John Mahama and propose that there ought to be broader national consultation. What's the point? We are going back and forth. Some see, what's this? With this CRC. And this work is hinged on CRC's work.
Yes. No, I think we are not talking at cross purposes. What we had intended to do after this, where the next step for us from the ministry was then to open it up for a cross-sectional interrogation. I'm talking about cross-sectional representation of the people of this country to interrogate what we come up with. And after that, in fact, we're going to elevate it to a national discourse. Perhaps sustain it for about 1 month, let the people talk to them. And then from that, we have this forum, which was going to last for a while, maybe about 2 weeks, and various issues, various aspects. We're talking about the executive, we're talking about legislature, we're talking about the judiciary, independent governance institutions, and so on. All of them were going to be interrogated by them, from which we thought would be born a consultative assembly or a constituent assembly, however it's so described. So what the president was talking about is about the same thing. And you remember that the president-elect, John Dramani Mahama, former President John Dramani Mahama, has already even spoken to it. He says he's heard that we are doing this. He will submit it to public validation. It's about the same thing. So I think we are
reference there was to the CRC's work, which was
he mentioned
Professor Mills's work.
No. He mentioned when Alan Chemate went to see him.
Right.
But he mentioned especially what we have been doing. And I remember I saw him and I heard him mention that he knows that Kyei Mensah Bonsu is also using a committee to also interrogate this matter. We need to submit the report to, and in fact, he and I had already earlier on had some discussion about what we had been doing. So I think that we are heading towards the same path, and how to bring illumination to it and how to bring it to a closure. But I think, and I agree with him, that further to what we have done, we must have a cross-sectional interrogation of the issues. I never foisted my own position on the committee.
Your position is known, and we have debated it on this particular platform on special edition with constitutional theorists like Mame Mensah Bonsu and the rest of them.
Right.
And many people loved your positions, including your advocacy for the Westminster system.
Yes.
But it does look like even this new proposition at the final work, it's more than what you had expected. Your number of ministers, you were looking for a number of what, less than 40 or so?
No, I was proposing that, let me say that, you know, our presidential candidate mentioned the figure 60. And I think that I was instrumental in determining the figure 60. President Mahama has mentioned,
your presidential candidate talks about 50.
50. I was very instrumental in that. President Mahama talks about 60, and I think it's not too much of a departure. But before then, even before this, the committee had come to that determination that no, 55 is good.
Okay.
So I think
hold
that
your thoughts
we are
there.
about
Hold your thoughts there.